Welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. A state funeral for former President Jimmy Carter will be held next month. What we know about the funeral plans and the legacy Carter left behind. President-elect Trump loses an appeal of the E. Jean Carroll verdict. The cases continue despite Trump's election victory. Families mourn the loss of their loved ones who perished in the plane crash in South Korea. The tragedy has left devastated relatives looking for answers. The de facto leader of Syria says it could take 4 years to hold elections in the country. The U.S. previously made clear that holding democratic elections is key to rebuilding the country. Why the country's leader says it could take so long? Shen Performing Arts successfully concluded 6 performances in Houston and Austin over the weekend. The artist received a special award from a Texas state senator. Find out the details.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good morning. Today is Monday, December 30th. I'm Don Ma. To start off, an update on President-elect Trump's legal cases. Trump just lost an appeal of the E. Jean Carroll defamation verdict. Today, a 3-judge panel of a federal appeals court in Manhattan upheld the $5 million verdict that Carroll won against Trump. Trump's lawyers argue the verdict should be thrown out because the trial judge should not have let jurors hear testimony from 2 other women who accused Trump of sexual misconduct. But the appeals court said Trump failed to show that the judges erred or that any errors warranted a new trial. Carroll's cases are continuing despite Trump's incoming presidential term. And Trump wants to keep Congressman Mike Johnson as House Speaker. His endorsement comes just days before the House is set to vote. Trump wrote today that Johnson is a good, hard-working, religious man who will do the right thing and continue to win. On Friday, the new Congress is set to convene to elect a House Speaker. January 9th will be a national day of mourning for former President Jimmy Carter. The White House proclamation from President Biden follows Carter's death at age 100. In it, Biden calls on Americans to assemble in their places of worship to honor Carter. He also asks people of the world to join in the observance. Biden also is directing the U.S. flag to fly at half-staff for 30 days. Tributes to former President Jimmy Carter poured in after he died yesterday at the age of 100. President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden called him an extraordinary leader, statesman, and humanitarian. Here's more.
President Biden broke from his family vacation in the U.S. Virgin Islands to remember Jimmy Carter.
Today, America and the world, in my view, lost a remarkable leader. He was a statesman and humanitarian. And Jill and I lost a dear friend.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly...
Biden remembered Carter's character and his values, saying he lifted people up and changed lives.
We may never see his like again. We'd all do well to try to be a little more like Jimmy Carter.
Biden's successor, President-elect Trump, also paid tribute to the deceased leader. In a social media post, Trump said, quote, "The challenges Jimmy faced as president came at a pivotal time for our country, and he did everything in his power to improve the lives of all Americans. For that, we all owe him a debt of gratitude." House Speaker Mike Johnson said Carter's story was one of humble beginnings and a testament to the opportunities available in America. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said Carter personified the meaning of leadership. Meanwhile, his successor, incoming Majority Leader John Thune, said Carter was a dedicated public servant and a man of faith. Tributes to Carter came in from around the world. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said Carter's presidency will be remembered for the historic Camp David Accords between Israel and Egypt.
I love you!
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called Carter's legacy one of compassion, kindness, empathy, and hard work. Carter also had a strong connection to Latin America, where he helped mediate conflicts. The president of Honduras said on social media, Carter was known for his policy of non-military intervention and respect for sovereignty. Venezuela's foreign minister said Carter was a man committed to peace and dialogue, and he had friendships with Presidents Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro. Carter's state funeral will be held in Washington on January 9th. President Biden has declared it as a national day of mourning.
Think of Jimmy Carter's greatest accomplishments, and the Camp David Accords are likely to come to mind. But that's not how Carter himself saw things. Here's a look at how the former president influenced U.S. policy toward communist China.
A smile and a handshake between two very different men who saw a common future. U.S. President Jimmy Carter and China's communist leader Deng Xiaoping both knew the fate of the world would one day hinge on relations between the U.S. and China. It was 1979. Washington established diplomatic ties with communist Beijing. For a president who got a deal done between Egypt and Israel and struck a nuclear accord with the Soviet Union, Carter believed ending hostility with Beijing was among his greatest achievements.
What are you most proud of?
I helped promote peace between other countries that were potentially at war. I reached out to long-term adversaries like China.
His decision came at a cost. The U.S. no longer officially recognizes Taiwan. U.S. troops pulled out. The island democracy of 24 million people now facing the growing threat of a possible Chinese attack.
From Taiwan's perspective, that meant that it officially became an unrecognized state, and that really is what put Taiwan in this very compromised position internationally.
The U.S. maintains unofficial ties with Taiwan, regularly selling weapons to its military. China experiencing huge economic growth, due in large part to its relationship with the U.S. Now, China is the world's second largest economy. But prosperity did not trigger political reform. Chinese leader Xi Jinping could potentially stay in power for life, with a military more powerful than ever. Bilateral relations dropping to the lowest level in years. Carter always maintained people-to-people ties will prevail. He made several trips to China after leaving office, warmly welcomed by top leaders. The 39th President of the United States, proud of his legacy, normalizing ties with China, now seen by many as the most important bilateral relationship of the 21st century.
Now, Carter introduced human rights into U.S. foreign policy for many foreign countries, but not China. After leaving office, he didn't stop engaging with Beijing. The think tank and foundation he founded have been promoting U.S.-China exchanges for many years. Carter has visited China almost every year until he fell ill with cancer in 2015. Chinese state media called on incoming President Donald Trump to, quote, carry forward Carter's legacy as a friend of China. Now on to the deadly plane crash in South Korea. The country's acting president has ordered an emergency safety inspection of the country's entire airline system. Yesterday's crash is South Korea's deadliest air disaster, killing 179 people. Investigators are still working to identify the victims. NTD's Daniel Monahan reports on the investigation and the aftermath of the crash.
All 175 passengers and 4 of 6 crew members were killed when a JEJU Boeing 737-800 belly landed and skidded off the runway at Mourn International Airport. The plane erupted in flames after slamming into a wall. 2 crew members were pulled out alive. South Korea's acting president Choi Sang-mok has declared the crash site a special disaster zone. He expressed his indescribable sorrow and profound regret over the loss of life.
I offer my deepest condolences to those who tragically lost their lives. I also feel deeply sorry and want to comfort the families who are left behind.
Rescue workers were seen Monday sifting through the wreckage of the aircraft. People paid their respects at a memorial for the victims of South Korea's deadliest crash. Flags flew at half-mast in tribute to the victims. The JEJU Air flight arriving from Bangkok was attempting to land just after 9 a.m. on Sunday when the crash occurred. Investigators are considering bird strikes and weather conditions as possible factors. A transport ministry official reported that the pilot told air traffic control about a bird strike shortly before the crash.
The control tower advised the pilot with the phrase, caution bird activity, at 8:59 a.m. The pilot reported an emergency declaration and go-around due to a bird strike. The pilot declared, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday.
Experts are raising questions, such as why the plane appeared to be traveling so fast and why its landing gear wasn't deployed when it skidded down the runway. Authorities are also investigating the role of the localizer antenna at the end of the runway. The device assists planes in landing. Most of the victims were local residents returning from holidays in Thailand. 2 Thai nationals also died. On Monday, investigators were identifying the remaining victims. Families are staying in tents set up at Muan International Airport. DNA samples are being collected for identification. Transportation Ministry officials said the jet's flight data recorder was recovered, but appeared to have sustained exterior damage. It's unclear if the data can be analyzed. Muan International Airport remains closed through Wednesday. President Biden said Sunday that the U.S. is ready to assist South Korea after the deadly crash.
Families are mourning the loss of their loved ones who perished on the JEJU air flight that killed 179 people. The tragedy has left devastated relatives looking for answers. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on two fathers trying to cope.
Junja Young scrolls through pictures of his daughter on his phone. She was one of 181 passengers on board the plane that burst into flames at the Muan International Airport yesterday.
When I saw the accident video, it seemed like out of control when the plane entered the airport. The pilots probably had no choice but to do it. My daughter, who was only in her mid-40s, ended up like this. This is unbelievable.
Jung's daughter, Mi Suk, was on her way home after traveling with friends to Bangkok. She is survived by her husband and teenage daughter.
She was almost home. She didn't feel the need to make a call. She thought she was coming home. By the time she took out her phone, the plane probably was crashed.
More than 1,800 miles from South Korea, a Thai family mourned the loss of their daughter as well. She was one of 2 Thai victims in the JEJU air jet crash that killed 179 people. The victim's father said that his third and youngest daughter had worked in South Korea for 7 years. She visited her family in Thailand once a year.
I can only accept it, make peace with it. When I think about it, I remind myself that it was an accident. It's something that can happen to anyone. So I've come to terms with it because no matter what I do, my daughter won't come back.
He just hopes he has the chance to recover his daughter's remains.
I just hope the government can provide some help. I want to bring my daughter's body back home for a proper religious ceremony.
South Korean investigators are examining bird strikes and weather conditions as possible factors in the crash. Many questions remain unanswered, including why the twin-engine Boeing 737's landing gear was not down before the aircraft skidded down the runway and crashed into a concrete wall. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Residents in Seoul expressed a mix of emotions following the accident yesterday. The fire crash left many in shock in the countries. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more reactions.
News of the JEJU air crash has shaken South Korea. One Seoul resident described how he felt following the accident.
Fear and sadness come together, and honestly, it's the end-of-year holiday season now. Just last week, I flew to JEJU Island using that same airline, so perhaps that's why this feels so much more real and terrifying to me. The fear has been overwhelming, and I've been feeling down and scared all weekend, even up until now.
Another local said the tragedy has him thinking twice about flying.
It's hard to imagine that an accident like this could happen to me just by taking a flight. But with this incident, I can't help but feel worried and cautious about flying in the future.
Several travelers at a Seoul airport agreed. One passenger expressed concerns about the kind of plane she'd be flying on.
We're here to go on a family trip to JEJU Island, and I am very worried because of yesterday's accident. So I checked with the airline to confirm the type of aircraft for my flight. And since it's different from JEJU Air's aircraft, we feel less uneasy about traveling.
Another 19-year-old passenger said the crash had made her uneasy about air travel.
I usually don't feel worried when taking flights, but today I feel a bit anxious. My family on JEJU Island has been quite concerned too, so I think that made me feel more uneasy as well.
Another JEJU air flight that took off from Seoul today returned to the airport shortly after takeoff due to a landing gear issue. The airline said the plane was a Boeing B-737-800, the same aircraft as the one that crashed Sunday while attempting to land without its landing gear engaged.
Coming up, former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo expressing concern over the New York City congestion pricing that takes effect Sunday. NTD's Chris Beers joins us to explain. President-elect Trump's recent comments about a visa program spark a debate on the right. Does the H-1B visa program replace American workers? That and more after the break.
This is such a gentle painting, so beautifully portrayed.
A group of people reading together in this simple, everyday-looking living room. A young girl reading along with an adult, a grandparent sitting in the lotus position, a businessman in his typical suit.
You see all those people, they look like they have quietly settled down there. And you as a viewer, it looks like you've just stepped in the door.
You can't see what it is they're reading, so you're a little bit curious and you're kind of invited to walk in.
This harmonious feeling is not by accident. It is the very subject of the work. The book they are reading is the main text of Falun Gong, which is an ancient Chinese spiritual discipline in the Buddhist tradition. At the core of Falun Gong are the values of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. Unfortunately, the practice is banned in China, where the artist resides. Thousands have been killed for their faith. Golden energy blooms into the room as a result of their steadfast faith. The painting on the back wall reminds us of this work's title, Plum Blossoms in a Muddy World.
It's also a metaphor for the practitioners that are sitting in the room as plum blossoms.
They signify perseverance and hope that all brutal winters end and life is renewed once again.
The magical painting.
There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children. She didn't know what to do.
Did you have a good day at school?
She gave them some broth without any bread.
There you go.
And kissed them all soundly.
Night night.
Good night. And put them to bed. Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org.
Welcome back. Commuters heading into Manhattan next week should prepare to pay a $9 fee if entering the grid south of Central Park. That's because New York Governor Kathy Hochul's first-in-the-nation congestion pricing law goes into effect on Sunday. It charges commuters for automobile travel in the city during peak hours. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, the creator of this controversial law, is expressing skepticism toward it now. Chris Beers is here to explain. Now, Chris, tell us about this back and forth between the two governors.
Don, so Andrew Cuomo's spokesperson, Rich as a Party, told the New York Post that Cuomo isn't exactly opposed to this legislation. He's just questioning the timing of it right now. I mean, New York City had a bit of a rough recovery from COVID. Some might say that's still occurring. There's a lot of skepticism about subway safety, and people who would be forced to take the public transit system because of this fee might feel uncomfortable with that. I mean, we saw the highest number of murders in the New York City public subways in the past 25 years. There was that woman who was burned to death just a week ago in the subway system. So yeah, he's saying it might not be the right time, and he's calling for a study to be done to determine whether or not it's the right time.
And Chris, if you wouldn't mind, could you give us a refresher of this law and how it works?
Yeah, so it's pretty simple, Don. It's the first of its kind in the entire country. It's never been tried before. Basically, it's a fee at peak hours if you're entering Manhattan south of 60th Street. If you're on the highways to the east west or south of Manhattan in that area, you won't be charged a fee. It's only if you go into the grid system, into the interlocking streets and avenues of the New York City. You'll be hit with a $9 fee. It could be implemented through the Easy Pass system, but it's only one time daily. It was $15, but New York Governor Kathy Hochul reduced that to $9 after the elections. There are some exemptions. So if you're a low-income New Yorker, you could be exempt by up to 50%. If you're a person with disabilities that inhibit you from using New York City's public transportation system, you could basically have the charge voided. Also, emergency vehicles, buses, specialized government vehicles, all of them will, of course, not have to pay the fee, Don.
So it appears that this law is pretty controversial. Can you tell us what the debate is?
Yeah, so those who are for this law say that it would reduce traffic, reduce car emissions in the city, essentially making the city a more pedestrian-friendly type of city, which makes sort of sense here. It would also raise funds to improve the New York City public transportation system, another good thing. People who are against it say that it would deter tourists and businesses from doing work inside of New York City at a time when the city is already feeling that pressure from inflation and the aftermath of COVID. Also, if you're commuting into the city 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, you're basically looking at $2,250 a year, which for some people kind of living on the razor's edge of what's possible for them financially, that could mean taking on an extra job. It could break the bank. Former President Donald Trump has vowed to get rid of this. It's not exactly clear how. He doesn't have jurisdiction over New York City. And it will be in effect for about 2 weeks at the point when he's inaugurated on January 20th. And also there's a lawsuit. The state of New Jersey is suing about this. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy is basically looking for something similar that Andrew Cuomo is looking for, some kind of study to be conducted, because again, this is experimental in the United States. This has never been tried before.
Yeah, definitely a lot of factors connected to this new law. Let's keep an eye on it and hope to hear from you soon.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Up next, officials predict this will be one of the busiest air travel days of the holiday season. Some passengers might be a bit nervous after a deadly accident in South Korea yesterday. Investigators are trying to determine why a JEJU air flight slid off a runway, crashing and catching fire. Experts say the circumstances appear to be unusual, but note that flying is one of the safest ways to travel.
The TSA expects today to be one of the busiest U.S. air travel days of this holiday season. The timing might be uncomfortable for some passengers. It follows a JEJU air flight crash in South Korea that killed 179 people yesterday. But experts say flying is very safe statistically, especially compared to driving. They point to safeguards that usually prevent a tragedy like what happened yesterday.
This is one of the safest airplanes record-wise, percentage-wise, that is in the air right now.
FlightAware lists the aircraft that crashed as a Boeing 737-800. Experts say thousands of them are in use, so they have a proven safety record. They also say airports are designed so planes with failed landing gear can slide safely.
If it veers off the runway to one side or the other into the grass, that there isn't obstructions and barriers of this type that are close to the runway.
As for concern a bird strike might have contributed to the crash.
I've never done an accident investigation where a bird strike, even when the engine fails, causes the landing gear to not come down.
In fact, experts say planes are designed to fly and land safely, even with just one engine.
Pilots train for engine out situations. They train for bird strikes.
A special new gift for the new year for drivers. Gas prices are expected to drop in 2025 for the third straight year. GasBuddy expects the national average for regular gas to fall to $3.22 a gallon. That's about 10 cents less than 2024. According to GasBuddy, if the projections hold, the typical household should spend about $2,250 on fuel next year. But gas prices could be disrupted by several factors, including President-elect Trump's proposed tariffs on Canada and Mexico. The incoming Trump administration plans to crack down on illegal immigration, but what about work-based immigration law? President-elect Trump defends the H-1B visa program amid an onslaught of criticism that it unfairly replaces American workers. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has the details.
Before this weekend, many were under the impression that President-elect Trump would revive his attempts to restrict access to H-1B visas. That's a temporary work-based visa that allows U.S. employers to hire foreign workers in specialty occupations, mostly used in the tech industry. But over the weekend, Trump revealed his support for the program, telling the New York Post, "I've always liked the visas. I have always been in favor of the visas. I have many H-1B visas on my properties." His comments come after Elon Musk defended the program, writing in response to an online critic, "The reason I'm in America, along with so many critical people who built SpaceX, Tesla, and hundreds of other companies that made America strong, is because of H-1B." But some argue the program has been used to replace American workers, a reality some acknowledge but blame the American culture and education system for a lack of skilled American workers.
The fact is, India is producing a significant number more of engineers than we are. So it's both a function of fixing our education system and having a legal immigration system that works.
Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, in a long social media post, called on Americans to step up to fix the problem, writing, "Too many of our young people are killing their bodies and minds on alcohol and drugs. Put down the selfie light and go apply for a job and replace the H-1B visa holders." Other lawmakers calling for reforming the system.
There's really no merit to this. It's just a lottery. So you see companies trying to game the system, IT companies sometimes putting 30,000 applications in, hoping to get 10,000 from a random lottery. That is a system I think that needs to be reformed.
It shouldn't be for accountants or entry-level IT jobs. It should really be for exceptional talent, and we can have that balance. And I hope President Trump actually looks at that bipartisan bill that would reform this.
Now the question is what kind of changes, if any, an incoming Trump administration would be willing to make to the visa program. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Coming up, the U.S. is set to send another $6 billion to Ukraine. What President Biden says about the additional aid. 3 migrants die while attempting to cross the English Channel from France to Britain by boat. This as Britain's running total of small boat migrants tops 150,000 since records began. And China today sentenced 2 teenagers to imprisonment for murdering their classmate. The tragedy puts a spotlight on so-called left-behind children. The victim and perpetrators were part of a generation of kids who are left behind with relatives while their parents go and work in cities. That and more after the break.
Whispered across generations, a hidden secret unveils the essence of longevity and vitality, a timeless legend regarding energy and wonder. Rooted in ancient health wisdom, we proudly introduce Pure Tang Black Ginseng, a 100% natural organic energy drink made from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng. It takes 2,260 days and nights from seed to growth, undergoing a meticulous 9-step process of steaming and drying. Black ginseng reaches its full potency, enriched with ginsenoside RG3 and enhanced absorption efficiency. No sugar, no caffeine, no artificial ingredients. Experience the pure, natural power of Pure Tang Black Ginseng. Nourish your body, strengthen your immunity, and boost your energy. To order Pure Tang Black Ginseng, please visit puretang.com.
我们师傅讲过，过去武术的身法，你上阵的，你要是身法你保持好了，你就失去了生命。
Are today's mainstream martial arts not traditional martial arts?
现在有些人他学说传统武术，他尤其是西方人，他不懂。 为什么我们要举行大赛呢？因为西方人他就是要提倡传统武术，复兴中华5000年的传统文化。传统武术，真正的传统武术是讲武德的。我相信有一点，就是守住武德，就有人教。
as the universe nears the end of its cycle of creation and destruction. The merciful King of Kings descends to save it, confronting the chaos sown by the malformed red dragon. Earth becomes the ultimate battleground. Humanity faces a defining choice. Our eternal fate hangs in the balance during this pivotal moment of cosmic shift.
Welcome back. The U.S. is set to send nearly $6 billion to Ukraine. That's for additional military budget assistance. President Biden made the announcement today saying he seeks to strengthen Ukraine's position in the war against Russia. Biden announced $2.5 billion in additional security assistance for Ukraine. The money comes from U.S. stockpiles and from the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative package. The Treasury says it will make available $3.4 billion in additional budget aid to Ukraine. Syria wants to strengthen its ties with Ukraine. The foreign ministers of the two countries are meeting in Damascus today. Kyiv is vying to support Syria by sending more food. Ukraine's foreign ministers announced that the country will send almost 500 tons of wheat flour to Syria tomorrow. The flour is said to be distributed free of charge to Syrian families. According to Ukraine, this will be sufficient to provide supplies to 33,000 Syrian families for a month. While Syria's new government is strengthening ties with Kyiv, the old regime was a staunch ally of Russia. Moscow previously said it's in contact with the new administration in Damascus. That's for talks, including over the fate of Russian military facilities in Syria. And staying with Syria, the country's de facto leader says it could take years to hold elections in the country. That's as the U.S. and other nations are calling for democratic elections. Here's what Syria's leader said after being asked if it could take up to 4 years before elections take place.
Yes, it is possible. We need a long time. The statistics is not an easy thing. Without this, the electoral process will be dishonest.
He says the country needs accurate statistics on the number of voters and those who might participate in the elections. Otherwise, they won't know if people actually voted. The de facto leader called this building the infrastructure before holding elections. The White House and the State Department previously called for democratic elections in Syria. Officials say it's one of the requirements for the U.S. to lift sanctions on Syria. Now, the latest updates from the war in Gaza. Relatives of hostages held by Hamas terrorists say they're not surprised by the latest reports of torture. Here are the details.
The Hostages and Missing Families Forum organized a candle-lighting ceremony Sunday in Hostages Square in Tel Aviv to observe the fifth night of Hanukkah. They responded to the Israeli government's report about the gruesome conditions hostages are held in.
It didn't surprise me. It's not surprising that after a year and 4 months that they have been there, that this is the report. And it's enough. The time is over.
The new report says hostages in Gaza were subjected to torture, including sexual and psychological abuse, starvation, burns, and medical neglect. The report is based on interviews with the medical and welfare teams which treated more than 100 Israeli and foreign hostages, most of whom were released late last year in a brief truce between Israel and Hamas. Meanwhile, Israel's military says it detained more than 240 people at one of Gaza's last functioning hospitals. The military says the hospital director is a suspected Hamas operative and that terrorists were using the facility. Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry said Israeli troops stormed the hospital this weekend, but denied the facility has been used by Hamas. The hospital has been hit multiple times over the past 3 months by Israeli troops. And in Israel, protesters are demanding the government agree to a ceasefire in a deal to return hostages still held by Hamas. As media reports of an imminent deal circulate, demonstrators in Tel Aviv on Saturday held a banner demanding actions, not miracles.
Hopefully, Netanyahu is not going to torpedo this hostage deal the same he's done for the last year.
We are asking again from President Trump, sir, please Don't let Netanyahu fool you. The only way to end this, the only way to end this regional war is to go for a hostage deal with a ceasefire.
On October 7, 2023, Hamas took about 250 people hostage. Of those, Israel says 100 still remain in Gaza, and many of those have likely been killed.
AT&T and Verizon have confirmed their networks were targeted by the China-backed hacking group Salt Typhoon. But both companies say the threats have been contained. Verizon reported that only a small number of high-profile customers, including government officials, were affected. They worked with cybersecurity firms and federal agencies to secure their systems. AT&T stated that while a few cases of compromised data were identified, they have taken steps to protect customer information. Lumen Technologies, however, reported no evidence of a Chinese attack on their network. These statements come amid an ongoing investigation into widespread espionage campaigns targeting U.S. telecoms. Next, let's turn to news from within China. A Chinese court today announced decisions regarding 3 middle schoolers who were charged in March for murdering a classmate. Local police found the body of a missing boy buried in a 2-foot deep hole in a garden. A police report says that the boy suffered brutal violence before death. The 3 teenagers plus the victim belong to a group known inside China as the Children Left Behind. The term refers to kids whose parents left them at home while they go and work elsewhere in order to financially support their families. They're known to live in conditions marked by poor education and nutrition. According to official statistics, crimes tied to them make up around 70% of China's juvenile crime rate. Last year's data says there are nearly 11 million children facing this situation in China. And back to the case, the court sentenced 1 teenager to life imprisonment and another one to 12 years in prison. It also ruled the third one free of criminal penalty, as the court found he was not directly involved in the crime. At least 3 migrants died while attempting to cross from northern France to Britain by boat early yesterday. Both French and British governments blame human smugglers for the deaths. It comes as the total number of immigrants arriving in Britain by small boat surpasses 150,000 since record-keeping began. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more on this from London.
French authorities said 3 migrants died while attempting to cross the English Channel from France to Britain. The British government said it was a tragedy that more lives have been lost during the Christmas period.
The prefect of Pas-de-Calais, Jacques Billon, said an overcrowded boat may have contributed to the tragedy. Around 50 people tried to board it. A British government spokesperson blamed human smuggling gangs for the deaths. The government has sought to tackle the criminal gangs to dismantle their illegal immigration business model and stop the boats. Here, a warehouse of small boats and outboard motors used by the migrants crossing the channel. Member of Parliament Mike Tapp said proposed counter-terror powers for border security enforcement will make the difference. This would allow the government to tackle, investigate and prosecute migrant smugglers in the same way as terrorists. Sunday's tragedy takes the deaths total this year to at least 53 and comes during a spike in channel crossing attempts as 2024 draws to a close. Officials have noted a significant increase in attempted crossings over the past few days. According to official data, nearly 37,000 migrants have made their journey so far this year, and a running total of over 150,000 since records began in 2018. Migrants favour the UK for reasons of language, family ties, or perceived easier access to asylum, work, housing, and social benefits such as money.
The British government has sought closer collaboration with overseas partners to smash the gangs, signing agreements with Serbia, North Macedonia, and Kosovo in November. These deals build on an existing agreement with Albania to increase intelligence sharing and intercept the gangs transporting people. Britain also agreed to a new deal with Germany in December to curb illegal immigration. It aims to break the business model of the gangs and reduce the influx of illegal immigrants into Germany, the UK, and the whole of Europe. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, London.
Thank you, Malcolm. And Japanese shares closed today at a 5-month high. This caps a record-breaking year for the Nikkei 225 index. The Tokyo Stock Exchange held a ceremony to mark the end of trading for 2024. The year saw a new market high for the Nikkei. The index began the year at the 33,000 yen level. It rose steadily throughout the year, reaching a new record in February of nearly 39,000 yen. That was a 34-year high. This level was last seen during the bubble era of 1989. The Nikkei has gained around 20% so far this year. Coming up in the NFL, Saquon Barkley breaks the 2,000-yard rushing mark as he inches closer to the record. NTD's Dave Martin joins us to discuss. Animals found their way into some unusual places this year. We have the highlights from stories that brought us joy and laughter in 2024. And Shen Performing Arts successfully concluded 6 performances in Houston and Austin over the weekend. The artist received a special award from a Texas state senator. That and more after the break.
Looking for a healthy and smooth-tasting brew? Drop by Days Coffee Roasters today and explore our wide selection of specialty-grade, small-batch roasted coffee. Home to North America's first enzyme-fermented coffee, we source a wide selection of specialty-grade coffee beans from around the world, and our baristas are ready to craft your customized brew. Visit Days Coffee at 28 North Street, Middletown, New York. Come experience a brew like no other.
Funny expression. There's a little scar right below his neck. The artist, on a trip to somewhere in South America, he met this kid who told him a story about himself. The technique is really good. As you'll see, like in the foreground, there's water on his face. The texture is so realistic, but then sort of in the back, you have these washed out colors, almost sort of fantasy feel. The whole of the picture is very balanced, and you still get that sense of harmony and warm light from it. The artist, he was really moved by the child's spirit. The child's from the slums, and so he looks around and he sees people who either get into drugs or they get into gangs, and he doesn't want that for himself. So he was telling this artist about how he's going to make a better life for himself. The immense spirit and determination that the kid had really stuck with the guy, so that's why he painted such a large portrait of the child.
Many of us have been child fighters, but this little kid learned to defend himself in his own way. It's a great sacrifice that way. And so this is another form of strength, another form of endurance. We are capable of much more than we think. These children amaze us.
When we first met Todd, he was singing a song, and I was like, wow, look at this kid with the biggest smile.
Todd's a joy.
Yes.
Todd's really is a great joy.
And you. Learn about adopting a teen at adoptuskids.org.
For the day's top headlines and the news you need to know, tune in right here to NTD Evening News.
Welcome back, and now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, good to have you here on this Monday morning.
Hey, good to be here, Don.
Yeah, so apparently it looks like a lot going on today, but if we could start in the NFL, as Philadelphia running back Saquon Barkley became the 9th player in the league, and that is to surpass 2,000 yards in a season yesterday. How close is he to breaking the record?
Yeah, he's 100 yards away. He's at 2005, actually, after getting 167 167 yards yesterday. Now, the record is 2,105. That was by Eric Dickerson back in 1984. I should point out, though, Dickerson did this in a time where they had a 16-game schedule. The NFL moved to a 17-game schedule just a couple of years ago. But the question is actually going to be whether he even gets a chance to break it next week. You know, his team, the Eagles, they've already clinched a playoff spot. There's just one more week to go in the regular season. Plenty of times coaches will typically rest their best players if there's not, in preparation for the playoffs, if there's not much to play for next week. Now, the Eagles, they've already clinched their division title. They've already wrapped up the number 2 seed in the playoffs. There's a slight chance they could move up to the number 1 seed, which would give them a first-round bye, but it's not very likely. So it seems there's a good chance they won't have anything to gain, in the standings anyway, by playing. But head coach Nick Sirianni said he has not decided yet, so we're going to have to wait and find out.
And let's talk about tonight in the NFL. The Lions, who are in contention for the aforementioned number 1 seed, play the 49ers. So what do they need to do to get that top seed? Yeah, for Detroit, it starts with a win tonight. Now, right now, the Vikings have the best record with 14-2 in the NFC. Detroit's a half game behind them, 13-2. And then Philadelphia, we just talked about, a game behind them at 13-3. So Philadelphia has the lowest chance at the 1 seed. Basically, the Lions would have to lose tonight and then beat Minnesota while Philadelphia wins. Then they'd all end up with that 14-3 record, and then it'd be up to a whole bunch of tiebreaker rules. But if Detroit wins tonight, then we really have a winner-take-all game next Sunday. Detroit happens to actually play Minnesota. The winner's going to get the division title, the number 1 seed in the playoffs, and a first-round bye that goes with it. The loser of that game, though, goes all the way down to the number 5 seed, opens the playoffs on a road. So it's a really big game next week. It's really one of those rare times that a schedule creates such a crucial game. And Dave, just one more thing. If we could shift gears to college basketball, 6 former Florida State basketball players apparently suing Florida State head coach Leonard Hamilton, alleging that, he didn't make good on a promise to get each of them $250,000 in name, image, and likeness compensation. Are there any of these plaintiffs still playing for the Seminoles? Yeah, actually, no. 2 of them exhausted their eligibility last season. The other 4 players transferred out. Now, according to the lawsuit, Hamilton promised them the money from his, quote, business partners. The lawsuit actually says these 6 players actually walked out of a practice last season over the missed payments and intended to boycott their big game against Duke. Now, this is in February. They ended up playing, though, after Hamilton guaranteed them they'd be paid, according to this lawsuit, but they were not. Now, this isn't the first time we've seen like these NIL deals kind of go wrong here. The starting quarterback for UNLV's football team, Matthew Sluka, left the team after just 3 games this season, saying he was never paid the $100,000 he was allegedly promised. Former Florida quarterback signee, he never actually played for them, Jaden Rashada, sued Gators head coach Billy Napier over an alleged $13 million NIL deal that was unpaid. So my guess is it's cases like these that have some coaches wanting some federal legislation over these NIL deals. Right now, it's a state issue. The NCAA has allowed them, but there's just no regulation over it. So I think we're going to continue probably to see these kind of deals go wrong as long as we don't have maybe the correct parameters for it anyway. Well, Dave, as always, interesting analysis. Thank you very much for joining us today. Well, thank you, Don. Up next, cats on catwalks, canine lifeguards, and yoga piglets were in some unusual places this year. Humans, of course, joined the fun with traditions and Instagram-worthy photos. NTD's Andrew Thomas has some of the highlights from stories that brought us joy and amazement in 2024.
Coinciding with London's Fashion Week, felines reclaimed the catwalk at the Loving Cats Worldwide Cat Extravaganza show. Thousands descended on London's Olympia in February to see some of the UK's most pampered cats. Larry the cat also waited patiently outside 10 Downing Street to find out who the next Prime Minister would be. The feline will remain chief mouser to the Cabinet Office. In Rome, international cat breeds competed at the annual Super Cat Show. Hundreds of felines and their breeders took over the Fiera di Roma for the 26th annual event. In Japan, Tokyo celebrated Hello Kitty's 50th anniversary with a new exhibition dedicated to the iconic cat. In the US, piglets hit a yoga class. A goat and even some rabbits joined the fun. Back in Italy, dogs showed lifeguards their natural talent in the water. The canines were popular with beachgoers and trained to save lives. In the Swiss Alps, residents and visitors celebrated the country's cows as part of an 8th-century-old tradition. Farmers brought their herds down from the mountains and led them in a procession. Back in London, sheep got a lot of attention. Actor Damian Lewis drove a flock of them across Southwark Bridge, honoring a medieval tradition. Animals weren't the only ones to delight and amuse this year. Humans around the world continued to amaze. In Bulgaria, bold locals danced barefoot over glowing embers. The ritual is held every year in the far southeast of the country. In Kosovo, fearless competitors jumped into the White Drin River from a 65-foot-high single-arch stone bridge. Spectators gathered to cheer them on. Diving from the structure began after World War II and has been held ever since. In Brazil, tourists lined up to cling for life from a rock hundreds of feet above the ground. Well, not really. Visitors posed next to Telegraph Rock for seemingly daring Instagram shots. The attraction made it seem like they're dangling from a cliff. So what will entertain us next year? We'll have to wait and see what 2025 has in store. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And finally, a journey through 5,000 years of traditional artistry and culture. Shen Yun Performing Arts graced the stage in Houston and Austin on December 28th and 29th. Audiences share their reflections on the show, which NTD sponsors as a media partner. Take a look.
Shen Yun Performing Arts took the stage for 6 performances in Houston and Austin on December 28th and 29th. The artists received a certificate commending their mission to revive traditional Chinese culture from a Texas state senator.
Absolutely beautiful. I mean, there was just nothing that I didn't think was awesome, because the coordination of the dances, the outfits, the multimedia with the screens and the orchestra, I mean, everything was just so perfectly timed.
Yeah, and I loved the excellence of the dancing. I loved that there were stories to be told. I really enjoyed the ethnic dancing, regional dancing. It was great.
It's very important to preserve and to show traditional culture everywhere, especially Chinese culture, because Chinese culture has so many other cultures as part of it.
Well, I thought it was very beautiful. The colors were amazing. The stories were beautiful. The messaging was nice, you know.
I liked the artistry a lot, and I liked the courage and the conviction of the show. I feel it is rare to see modern art that takes strong political and religious stances, and I liked that the show was brave about doing that, especially against the communists.
Traditional Chinese culture finds its roots in spirituality and the divine. Shen Yun showcases those themes through classical Chinese dance, music, and legends.
And it was definitely a spiritual presentation. So believing that there is more than this world, and that we have a relationship, and that we will reap what we sow here, absolutely. I believe that.
Some of the stories involved direct acts of kindness, and I think that most people long for kindness in the world, and you guys really conveyed that.
Yes, I feel hopeful when it was talking about the creator is coming. I definitely can understand where the storyline, and I feel hopeful about it for sure.
Shen Yun will be performing at the Tobin Center for the Performing Arts in San Antonio, Texas, on December 30th and 31st. NTD News, Houston, Texas.
And that's all for today's show. For round-the-clock original news coverage, be sure to watch us live at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. And if you have any feedback, please email us. Thanks for tuning in.